I was sitting on the balcony of our Paris suite, legs up, glass of wine in hand, watching the lights of the Eiffel Tower blink to life as the sun dipped below the skyline. After 6 brutal years of Hargrave Technologies, 6 years of late nights, endless travel, and missed anniversaries, I was finally off the clock. The kind of off where you don't even think about the inbox. Ashley was inside, on a call with her sister, probably gushing about the view of the hotel or the fact that I'd actually stepped away from work for once. I remember thinking how surreal it felt to just sit still. Then my phone buzzed. Private number. I almost let it ring out, but old habits die hard. I answered. Grant Hargrave's voice exploded through the line before I could say a word. What the hell are you thinking, Brandon? No hello, no preamble, just fury. I stood up, confused, walking to the far corner of the balcony to hear better. You left us exposed, he snapped. That deal with Dynacor fell through. 12 million, gone. And where the hell are you? Paris. I didn't even know what deal he was talking about. Grant. I said, try to keep my voice steady. That negotiation was reassigned to Derek 2 weeks ago. You approved this vacation yourself. You signed the leave form. I have the email. I wasn't defensive. But my stomach was starting to knot. I don't give a damn what I signed. He shot back. You were supposed to monitor it. You're VP of operations. You don't get to vanish when things go south. He was yelling now, his voice bouncing between rage and disdain. You know how this looks? My son-in-law off sipping wine in France while my company bleeds money. I opened my mouth to respond, but he didn't let me. I can't trust you. I don't care what the paper trail says. You're done. As of now. My breath caught. I actually looked at my phone screen like maybe it was a prank call or a bad connection or something that would make the surreal moment logical. Wait, what? I asked, barely believing I needed to. You're fired, Brandon, he said coldly. Clean out your office when you're back. HR will be in touch. This conversation is over. And just like that, the line went dead. I stood there, phone still pressed in my ear, the screen now black, Eiffel Tower still sparkling behind me like a cruel joke. Fired. On vacation. Over something I didn't even touch. After everything I'd given that company, everything I'd given him, he didn't even hesitate. No conversation. No warning. Just cut off like a liability. The worst part? Ashley. She hadn't heard yet. Her voice drifted through the glass doors as she laughed on her video call, unaware that her father had just blown up our lives. I didn't even know how to walk back into that room. I stood there on that balcony, staring out at the skyline, the phone still warm in my hand, the last words from Grant echoing in my skull like a gunshot. Fired. Fired for something I didn't do, on a vacation he approved, after 6 years of bleeding for that company. I let out this sound, somewhere between a bitter laugh and a grunt of disbelief, and I must have laughed louder than I thought, because a man at the next table turned his head. He was older, sharp suit, silver hair perfectly combed back, the kind of calm confidence that only comes with power and age. He raised his wine glass slightly, almost like a salute. Rough call? He asked, with that knowing smile people wear when they already know the answer. I gave him a half shrug and said something like, just lost my job, apparently. I think I was still in shock, because I heard myself say it before I fully believed it. He tilted his head and studied me for a second. Brandon Mitchell, right? He asked. That pulled me out of my daze. I turned to face him, yes. I said cautiously. He extended his hand. Daniel Cross. Crosscore Dynamics. My mouth went dry. I knew exactly who he was. Everyone in the industry did. CEO of Hargrave Technology's biggest competitor. The same man who tried to recruit me twice over the past 4 years. Both times, Grant had caught wind of it, threatened him with legal action, claimed I was under contractual restrictions that didn't even exist. It was all smoke and pressure tactics, but it worked. At the time, I couldn't risk the fallout. And now here he was, casually sipping Burgundy in the same Parisian restaurant, less than 5 minutes after I'd been axed. Fate's funny, isn't it? He said, almost reading my thoughts. I heard you were in Paris. Didn't expect to find you alone. I didn't say anything. I was still trying to figure out if this was real. He gestured to the empty seat at his table. Join me? Still stunned, I moved over and sat down across from him. He poured me a fresh glass of wine without asking. I'm sorry about Grant, he said. Not surprised, mind you. That man's loyalty has a very short shelf life. I nodded slowly. He blamed me for a $12 million loss on a deal I wasn't even managing. Fired me on the spot. Daniel leaned back, clearly amused. Then he just made the dumbest decision of his career. That's when he dropped it. No build-up, no fluff. Just straight to the point. I want you at CrossCore, Brandon. I'm offering triple your Hargrave salary, a seat at the executive board, equity, and 6 weeks vacation. You won't answer anyone but me. I stared at him. You know I was under a non-compete. You were, he replied, swirling his wine. But you just got fired. That changes everything. Grant severed the employment without cause, which legally dissolves the non-compete. You're free. It hit me then. He was right. Grant screwed up in more ways than one. He thought he was punishing me, cutting ties before I became a liability. But in doing so, he'd also removed the one legal barrier keeping me out of CrossCore's hands. But there's one condition, Daniel added. I want the Pacific Asia deal. He didn't need to explain it. I knew exactly what he meant. It was a deal I'd spent 18 months engineering from scratch. Supplier chains, logistics modeling, tax bridges, even personnel assignments. Hargrave was just a shell. The client didn't trust the company. They trusted me. I had structured it that way on purpose. Grant didn't even realize how much of that deal had my name woven into it. The client had told me more than once, if I ever left, they'd follow. Daniel saw the hesitation in my face and leaned in. You built it. You earned their loyalty. Grant used you and cut you loose when it suited him. So the way I see it, you owe him nothing. I sat there, the weight of everything collapsing and rebuilding in a single hour, the city lights dancing across the wine in my glass, and realized he was right. I landed back in Seattle with a kind of calm I hadn't felt in years. Not the quiet kind you get after a long day or a good sleep, but the kind that settles in your bones when you finally stop lying to yourself. A cab ride from the airport was a blur. Rain tapped steadily against a window, and the city looked the same. But I wasn't. I knew what I had to do before the wheels even touched the runway. I didn't unpack. I didn't eat. I dropped my bag by the door, sat down at my desk, and opened my laptop. For the next 7 hours, I wrote. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of precision. I detailed everything I'd seen at Hargrave Technologies over the past 6 years. The internal cover-ups, the creative accounting used to make quarterly numbers look better than they were, the deals Grant claimed as his own that were salvaged by last-minute patches I coordinated behind the scenes. I documented the high-level client relationships that were quietly crumbling because Grant insisted on micromanaging people who didn't want to be managed. I laid out the full failure of the North Point integration that cost the company $4 million and 2 major clients, which they blamed on a junior analyst who was fired to protect Grant's pride. I included screenshots, emails, audit trails, and annotated contracts. Every file, every timestamp. Every report was backed up to a secured server, encrypted with 2-factor authentication, and legal clearance I'd arranged through a private third-party firm Daniel Cross connected me with. This wasn't a tantrum. It was a record. When I finished, I compressed the folder, locked it behind a digital signature, and sent to Cross with a single sentence. Now you'll understand how deep the rock goes. I sat back in the chair and stared at the wall. No celebration. No dramatic music. Just silence. That kind of silence that fills a room when something important just ended. Not the job. Not the betrayal. The illusion. The one I built around my life with Ashley. The one where I kept convincing myself we were solid. That we were a team. That wasn't weird she always found a way to smooth over her father's outbursts, or that she never pushed back when he inserted himself into our plans or criticized me in front of her. She got home 2 hours later. Her voice echoed down the hallway as she kicked off her shoes and tossed her coat over the dining chair like always. I was still in the office. Door open, eyes closed for a second too long. She walked in, smiling at first, until she saw the open laptop and the dead look on my face. What happened in Paris? It was a misunderstanding, she said, as if rehearsing it. My dad was under pressure. The timing was terrible. He shouldn't have done it like that, but he'll talk to you. Maybe there's a way back. I turned to face her slowly. That was the moment I knew. Not just suspected, but knew. She wasn't angry at her father. She wasn't stunned that he fired me on vacation or that he accused me of sabotage. She wasn't shocked that he'd cut me out without warning. She wasn't even surprised. Did you know about the Florida thing? I asked suddenly. She blinked, caught off guard, then frowned. What are you talking about? The family trip. The one everyone's going on next month. The one no one told me about. Her face didn't even twitch. That's not the point right now, she said. We need to focus on fixing this. That was it. That single sentence, flat and calculated, like I had just lost my job because of a paperwork error. like her father hadn't publicly humiliated me and discarded everything I gave to that company. "I'm not fixing anything," I said quietly. "You've spent your entire life believing he's always right, that everything he does must be for a reason, and I let that slide. I told myself that it was just family loyalty, that he's your father. But this," I gestured to the laptop, "this wasn't business. It was personal, and you still think he can do no wrong." She didn't respond, just crossed her arms and stared at the floor like she was waiting for the storm to pass. That's when I understood. She was never going to choose me over him. She didn't even think it was a choice. It was 3 days after I submitted everything to Cross when my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen since Paris. I let it ring twice, then answered, not because I was curious, but because I knew exactly what this was going to be. Grant Hargrave didn't call unless he needed something. Sure enough, the moment I picked up, his voice came through, slightly restrained, but already twitching with that brittle edge I'd heard so many times in boardrooms when he realized he made a mistake but refused to admit outright. "Brandon," he said, like we were old friends, like he hadn't detonated my career with one impulsive phone call. "I've been going over things. Seems like Marcus dropped the ball. That Pacific Asia deal, it wasn't your fault. You were right to delegate. You followed procedure." There was a pause, as if he expected me to thank him for the acknowledgement. I didn't say a word. I let him sit in it. He cleared his throat. "Look, I've spoken to the board. They agree it was premature. I overreacted. You've been a cornerstone of this company for years. Let's talk about getting you back on track. I can reinstate your title immediately." I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch. "You fired me over a phone call, Grant, on PTO, without even asking for clarification." There was a beat. "Yes, well, tensions were high. I shouldn't have handled it that way. Let's not let one moment undo 6 years of work." I could practically hear him choking on the next part. "What would it take to bring you back?" I smiled to myself, not because I was enjoying it. This wasn't about revenge, but because the balance had shifted and he felt it. "Nothing," I said. "There's nothing you can offer. CrossCore already hired me." The silence on the other end turned ice cold. "You what?" "Triple the salary, executive board, equity, 6 weeks vacation, and full support for the Pacific Asia transfer." His tone changed immediately. Gone was the half-hearted humility. "You son of a bitch," he hissed. "You're going to run the Cross? After everything I did for you?" "You fired me, Grant. I didn't leave. You terminated my contract without cause during an approved vacation and blamed me for something you now admit I didn't do. You made me expendable." I took that seriously. "You'll regret this," he snapped. "You think you're safe at Cross? You think I won't sue? You think I won't burn you to the ground? You'll never work in this industry again. I will make sure your name is poisoned in every executive room on the West Coast." I kept my voice calm. "You can try, but I documented everything. Every false claim, every manipulation, every email. You want a public trial? Go ahead. Just know that once the HR files come out, the audit trails, the emails you forgot to delete, your board will bury you before they ever come for me." There was a long, bitter pause. Then the line clicked dead. And just like that, the panic had begun. Ashley stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, tears barely held back, her voice sharp with something between disbelief and fury. "That deal was supposed to fund our family's future," she said, not looking at me, staring instead at the granite countertop, like it might offer an answer she could live with. Her voice cracked, but there was more accusation than grief behind it. I didn't say anything at first. I let the silence sit between us, thick and unmoving. She wasn't wrong about the deal. It was massive. The Pacific Asia Agreement was the kind of project that could spin off an entire division, the kind of deal that would have padded Hargrave Technologies for years. But it wasn't my responsibility to save her father's legacy, not after what he did. "Your father fired me," I said finally, on vacation, over a decision he now admits wasn't mine. Ashley turned then, eyes glassy but still hard. "You took the deal with you. Brandon, you knew it would crush him." I shook my head. "I took what I built. I didn't steal anything. That client was loyal to me. I was the architect of that entire structure. Your father just wanted credit." "You're destroying him," she whispered, like I had taken a sledgehammer to her family home and left the rubble on her doorstep. Her hands were shaking slightly, and I could see the war behind her eyes, between the person she built a life with and the man who had shaped her entire identity. "I'm protecting myself," I said quietly. "I gave your father 6 years of my life. I missed birthdays. I missed our anniversaries. I covered for his failures, smoothed over his tantrums, kept my mouth shut while he humiliated me in meetings. And I did it all because I thought it mattered to him, to us. But the second he felt the ground shift beneath him, he threw me out like garbage. He didn't call to ask what happened. He didn't check facts. He just cut me loose. Ashley looked down again. He panicked, she said, but it was weak, like she didn't believe it either. And you? I asked. She didn't answer. She just stood there, hands clasped together, breathing slow and shallow, like she was waiting for someone to shift. Maybe inside me, maybe in herself. Later that night, she left. No argument, no slammed doors. Just said she needed to talk to her father. I didn't stop her. She was gone for 3 days. No texts, no calls. The house was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the refrigerator when I sat in the living room. I didn't know what to expect when she came back, but part of me still held on to this thin thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, she would choose me. She walked in, not with hesitation, but with resolve. She had a manila envelope in her hands. She didn't sit down. She didn't take off her coat. She just held it out like it weighed nothing. But her shoulders told another story. They're from my father's lawyers, she said. I took the envelope. Divorce papers. Clean. Precise. Already filled in. You didn't even talk to me, I said, voice low. I did, she replied. This is me talking. Her voice was flat now. Not cruel, just empty. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't loud. It was just inevitable. The transition into cross-core wasn't just smooth. It was like stepping into oxygen after years of suffocating under someone else's ego. The Pacific Asia deal, once tangled in Hargrave's bureaucracy, took on a new life. The client followed without hesitation, and within a quarter, we had expanded into 3 new markets. I had a team that listened, resources that arrived before I had to fight for them, and leadership that didn't second-guess every decision with veiled condescension. I wasn't rebuilding. I was finally building something that was mine. Meanwhile, Grant went on the offensive. The man who once boasted about how no one ever left his company without regret was now trying to drag me back through the mud. I got served at my apartment. 2 thick envelopes accusing me of theft, conspiracy, and intellectual property violation. It was laughable. The so-called evidence was flimsy. A few internal documents, most of which I'd written, some meetings I'd scheduled, and 1 email cherry-picked out of context. The rest was theater. His attorneys wrapped it in legal jargon, hoping something would stick. CrossCore's legal team tore it apart in 2 weeks. But the real damage wasn't to me. It was to him. The lawsuit forced Hargrave Technologies to disclose internal communications, which meant the board got a front-row seat to Grant's decision-making, or lack thereof. They saw the rushed termination, the inconsistent justifications, the complete absence of due process. They read the HR memos he tried to suppress, the ones where I documented my concerns about project mismanagement, including the Dynacore negotiation. He blamed me for 2 board members resigning within the month. One of them, Dan Whitaker, had been with Hargrave since its founding. He called me directly after stepping down. His voice was calm, but there was something tired in it. You were the future, he said. He was just too proud to see it. Weeks later, both he and Melissa Zhao, Hargrave's only strategic analyst on the board, joined CrossCore as consultants. That sent a very different message to the market. Inside Hargrave, the cracks became impossible to ignore. Revenue projections dropped. Internal promotions stalled. Employees who once parroted Grant's authority started jumping ship. And Grant? He unraveled. I wasn't there to witness it, but I heard enough. During one board meeting, he lost control, shouting at executives, accusing them of sabotage, waving around printouts of CrossCore press releases like they were evidence of betrayal. He demanded loyalty. He got silence. 3 months after that outburst, the board held a vote. The press release called it retirement. Those of us who knew better called it what it was: surrender. Grant Hargrave, founder and CEO, was gone, forced out by the same people who once nodded at every word he spoke. The same people who, when faced with the truth, turned away from him just as quickly as he'd once discarded me. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. No subject line, just her name in the inbox after months of complete silence. Ashley. I hadn't heard from her since the divorce papers were delivered. No messages, no questions, not even a cold check-in. She disappeared from my life the moment I stopped orbiting her father's world. I stared at the center field for a while before I opened it, already knowing it wouldn't be an apology. I hope you're happy, it began. 5 words, cold and sharp, like she had been saving them for this exact moment. Dad had a heart attack. He's stable. The stress didn't help. That was it. No greeting. No sign-off. No curiosity about my life. No acknowledgement of a role in any of it. Just a single attempt to lay something at my feet, as if I was supposed to feel responsible for the weight Grant had spent decades building and finally collapsed under. I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I wanted to be sure that what I felt or didn't feel was real. And it was. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel remorse. I didn't feel vindicated, either. I felt clean. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't twisted up in Grant's dysfunction or buried under Ashley's need to keep peace at any cost. I wasn't being pulled between ambition and obligation or silence and survival. I didn't owe anyone anything. Not explanations. Not apologies. Not regret. I closed the email without replying. And in that quiet moment, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to fully admit until then. I was free. At cross core, everything was different. From the very beginning, I wasn't seen through the lens of someone else's last name or reputation. No one whispered that I only got the job because of who I was married to. No one second-guessed my position in the room or looked for ways to tie my credibility to someone else's shadow. I wasn't the son-in-law anymore. I was just Brandon, and that was more than enough. I rose quickly, not because I played politics, but because I didn't have to waste energy defending my seat at the table. My ideas were heard without being filtered through someone else's ego. My team trusted me because I trusted them. We executed the Pacific Asia expansion with precision, then scaled it into something bigger than even I had envisioned when I first mapped out in a hotel room 2 years earlier for the first time in my career. Success wasn't a minefield, it was momentum. I took my first real vacation since Paris. 6 full weeks. No emails. No damage control. No veiled threats wrapped in family obligations. Just space. I went off the grid and actually meant it. Slept until I felt rested. Ate slowly. Laughed without looking over my shoulder. I stopped grinding my teeth at night. Stopped waiting for the phone to ring with a demand disguised as a favor. I breathed like a man who had been holding it in for far too long. I learned that freedom doesn't come from a title or a paycheck. It comes from walking away from people who only value you when you're useful and punish you the moment you draw a line. Grant thought he was teaching me a lesson when he fired me, that I was replaceable, that loyalty meant silence, that gratitude required obedience. But the real lesson was this. The moment you stop begging for approval is the moment you reclaim your power. You can't make people value you. You can only decide that their disrespect is no longer something you're willing to carry. I stopped carrying it. And I never looked back.